The Guardrail Amputation Incident. On a beautiful afternoon in the Swiss Alps, a young man was showing his girlfriend just how fast his new Ducati could handle the winding mountain roads. He was an expert rider, decked out in the best racing leathers, a carbon fiber helmet, and professional grade boots. He was perfectly safe. That's what I would say if he wasn't driving at 140 miles per hour. At one particularly sharp turn, he miscalculated the turn and leaned in so much that his bike went low and his knee puck scraped the asphalt, and to find balance, his body automatically raised his other leg and went high enough to catch the edge of a weathered, jagged guardrail. The steel didn't break his leg. It acted like an industrial saw. The force and friction shredded through the leather, skin, muscle, and bone, instantly severing his leg at the hip and turning it into a spray of red mist and biological matter. His upper body, still attached to the bike, slid for another 300 feet down the road. His girlfriend, following in the car behind him, was the first person on the scene to find what was left. It was pronounced dead from catastrophic blood loss. The barbed wire incident. In rural Texas, on a dusty farm road late one night, a teenager named Jesse decided to escape his quiet house for a while. It was the kind of night where the air is cool and the stars are bright. A perfect night for a ride, taking his dirt bike out across the familiar fields behind his home. He knew these paths by heart, and the cool night air was a welcome relief from the stifling boredom of a Tuesday night. It was a simple, perfect moment of freedom, but his headlight was busted, and he was navigating by memory and faint starlight. What he didn't know was that the farmer who owned the land, tired of trespassers, had stretched 3 strands of old barbed wire across the main path that morning. At 50 miles per hour, the wire was invisible. His bike's front wheel hit the bottom strand and snapped it, sending the bike careening into a ditch. Jesse wasn't so lucky. The top strand caught him directly across the throat. It didn't just cut him. It acted as a high-tension garrote, slicing through his trachea, carotid arteries, and cervical spine, nearly decapitating him. He was thrown backward off the bike, his joyride ending in a silent, gurgling heap in the middle of a dark field. The Manhole Incident. On June 16, 2016, in downtown Chicago, Marcus, a motorcycle courier, was making his last delivery of a long, tiring day after a 10-hour shift. He was on autopilot, expertly zipping through the congested traffic. His mind was already on what he was going to have for dinner. He saw a gap open up ahead and twisted the throttle, eager to deliver his final delivery of the day and go home. Unfortunately for him, a city maintenance crew had failed to properly seat a heavy cast-iron manhole cover, leaving its front edge sticking up by less than an inch. It was a tiny, mundane mistake with catastrophic consequences. The motorcycle's front tire hit it at 40 miles per hour. The impact instantly flipped the 100-pound iron disc vertically into the air, turning it into a spinning, airborne blade right in his path. He had zero time to react. He slammed chest first into its razor-thin edge. It wasn't like hitting a wall. It was like being struck by a giant, flying axe. The force of the impact split his torso wide open from his stomach down to his pelvis, tearing his body open and turning his insides out in a flash of gore. He was thrown from the bike, his internal organs spilling onto the street in front of horrified commuters. The bike, now riderless, skidded for another 50 feet before coming to a halt. By the time other passengers came to check on him, he was still conscious. His first instinct, even in his mangled state, was to try and stand, a final, futile act of will against the impossible. He asked for help before passing out, but he succumbed to his injuries before reaching the hospital. The fire hydrant incident. On September 26, 2006, in Dallas City, Kevin had recently broken up with his girlfriend. To numb the pain, Kevin went to a bar and drank too much alcohol. On his way back, he felt invincible. 6 shots in, the city lights blurred into beautiful streaks as he gunned his sport bike down the empty late-night streets. The roar of the engine was the only sound in the world, a triumphant shout against the quiet of 2 a.m. He was the king of the road. In a burst of alcohol-fueled confidence, he pulled back on the handlebars, lifting the front wheel into a high-speed wheelie. For a glorious second, he was flying, but his drunken balance was a mirage. He overcorrected, and the bike wobbled violently before slamming back down onto the asphalt. It shot sideways, bucking him off and sending him sliding across the pavement directly toward the curb. Waiting there, bolted to the concrete, was a squat, cast-iron fire hydrant. He hit it feet first at over 60 miles per hour. The hydrant didn't just stop him. It acted as a brutal, immovable wedge. The impact shattered both his legs instantly. but his torso's momentum carried him forward and over the top. The large, hexagonal operating nut on the hydrant's cap caught him directly in the groin, splitting his pelvis and driving the entire valve assembly upward into his abdominal cavity. The sheer force turned his insides into a pulped slurry and snapped his spine. His body, now hideously impaled and folded over the hydrant, smashed the main valve, and a geyser of high-pressure water erupted, washing over what was left of him. He was dead before the first drop of water mixed with his blood on the street. It was a completely avoidable tragedy, the final consequence of mixing profound grief with alcohol. A single phone call for a taxi would have cost him a few dollars. The decision to ride home cost him everything. The truck incident. I need to be upfront with you on this next one. The official reports were so stomach-churning that I had to remove some of the details from the incident you're about to hear. The truth is far worse. On a stormy night in Georgia, a long-haul trucker named Earl was pushing his Peterbilt rig down I-95, trying to make up for lost time. The rhythmic thump of his wipers was a hypnotic metronome against the country song playing on his radio. Behind him, a motorcyclist on a Harley was struggling with the torrential rain and the blinding spray from the truck's 18 wheels. He was cold, soaked, and his visibility was almost zero. He was desperate to get around the semi, but traffic was heavy. So he made a fatal decision. Seeing what he thought was a gap, he accelerated hard, but his rear tire hit a deep patch of standing water and began to hydroplane. For a fraction of a second, he felt a terrifying weightlessness as he lost control instantly. The bike went down, sliding with terrifying speed directly underneath the semi-trailer, right between its rear axles. Inside the truck, Earl felt a slight, jarring thump, barely noticeable over the roar of his engine and the rattling of the road. He dismissed it as another piece of blown-out tire debris. Annoyed, he turned up the radio, thinking a brake line must be dragging. But it wasn't a brake line. This was a rider getting crushed. He became what truckers grimly refer to as a human crayon. He was pinned between the truck's undercarriage and the abrasive asphalt, dragged for nearly half a mile at 70 miles per hour. The immense friction and pressure generated so much heat that his body was literally ground away. Earl only pulled over when another driver frantically overtook him, horn blaring, the driver's face a pale mask of horror. When Earl finally climbed down from his cab and looked, there was nothing left for the coroner to put in a body bag. At the end of the half-mile smear, wedged in the glowing hot brake assembly of his rear axle, was a single shredded leather boot. State troopers had to shut down the interstate for 6 hours, while a cleanup crew used shovels and high-pressure hoses to remove the remains from the road. For hours afterward, thousands of cars would be rerouted, unknowingly driving around a sanitized crime scene, where the dark stain on the asphalt was the only epitaph left for the man who had been erased. The moral of the story is respect the machine, respect the road, and most importantly, respect your own mortality.